Welcome to the Maguire Iron Podcast. My name is Brian Cooper. I am the Director of Marketing at Maguire Iron and your host for this podcast. At Maguire Iron, we've been helping to store and protect quality water for over 100 years. On this episode, we will discuss the process of building a new water tank with the Chief Estimating and Project Management Officer for Maguire Iron, Troy Werdel. Troy has been at Maguire Iron for the past 15 years. He's a graduate of South Dakota State University with degrees in construction management and business. Troy, thank you for joining me on the Maguire Iron Podcast.
Thank you, Brian.
Let's talk about new water towers. How do new water storage tank projects begin?
Well, essentially what happens is there's communities around the country that either growing, with the agriculture, people moving into the cities after college, and the cities communities are growing, or the need for new tanks because their old storage tanks have run their course. So those are usually the two items that come up for the need for new water storage.
Talk about funding, because that's one of the first essential things for a community that needs a new water tower is how are we going to pay for this? Because this is a large piece of infrastructure that can cost a community quite a bit of money.
Yes, exactly. So what they do, to back up just a little bit, most of these communities will hire an engineering firm that will come in and evaluate their water needs, evaluate the storage, what they need for storage, how big of a tank they're going to need, and then what the ancillary things that go with it would be. So there's local funding where some of these communities have maybe a large Amazon that would come into town that would need some water, or a large company who would need some fire protection or some drinking water. So there's the private funding issue with it. There's actually some state funding that could go with it, and some federal funding. But the engineer will come in and they will decide kind of the best avenue. There's grants for different communities out there that they can get some nice, some free money out there for them to help with their water system if their system is really dilapidated and needs to be replaced.
So a company or a community hires an engineer. The engineer says, okay, here's what we're going to do. They go out, they secure funding. Then what does the engineer have to do from there? Because, you're talking about where's the tank need to go? What size should it be? Like, how do all of those things get factored into what a community decides to do?
So the engineer, honestly, there's a lot of engineers out there that are experienced with the water storage, but a lot of times they will come to Maguire and ask us, what we do to help and what we can do. So we'll write specifications. We'll show them, the size, geometry of the tanks that we can provide, and then the style that would best fit them for the size. And then, we kind of run through cost cycle analysis with them, money constraints if there are any, and then really help. We're very integral with the engineering firms in their design and the size that they choose, and then helping them with kind of an upfront budget, kind of what they can expect to spend on the project, and then that helps them go back to the funding agency for additional funding or for the accurate amount of funds that they need.
How important is that Maguire provides a service like that? Because a lot of engineering firms, most communities have a water tower for 100 years if they're going to replace it, or, they don't add them every year. So a lot of engineering firms, I'm guessing, this isn't something they do every day. I'm sure there are some that specialize in it, but for the most part, this isn't something that's really in their wheelhouse. So it's important that Maguire provides a service like this.
Yes, exactly. Absolutely. We do everything we can to make sure that the engineers go into a bid process with all the information they need for the owner, so there aren't any change orders, there aren't any changes, there aren't any surprises. We can let them know what to expect and usually when to expect it when a project gets taken care of.
So once the owner and engineer figure out, okay, this is the tank style we want, this is the size it needs to be, this is the location, what happens next?
Then we'll go into a bid process. So the bid process is, they go out. It's usually a public bid since it's public funding. So they'll go out and they'll advertise, what they need. Here's the project. Here are the specifications, and then they'll go and we'll bid on the project. And then from there, from the bid process, we'll go into the bidding. a geotechnical report has been done, so we know what soils are on there. And then on the front side, Maguire Iron will actually engineer the design of the tank foundation, and that's what we bid this work off of. As far as the bid process itself, there's a foundation, a quite large foundation, and some process piping and some site piping and things like that'll feed this tower and feed the community. And from there, we bid the foundation out, the tank painting, tank electrical, and most of the time the low bidder wins the project.
And there's, I think a lot of people don't realize in that bid process, there's a lot of I's to dot and a lot of T's to cross as you go through this process. How important is it that, that the engineer and the people bidding have everything in there so that there's no surprises in the project at some point?
Well, there's two parts to that really. That's huge actually. The dotting your I's and crossing your T's part of it for the owner itself and the engineer. You got to make sure that everything is included with the specifications. But on the other side of it too is the funding piece of it and the upfront bidding contractual part of it. You got to make sure that from our end that we're bidding, we're using the proper bid forms within the contracts. We're using the what's been given to us, I guess. We're using all the documentation that's been given to us from the funding agency and following their requirements.
So once Maguire Iron wins a bid, is the low bidder is awarded the bid, then what happens to the project from there?
Well, we go into what they would call the pre-construction process, pre-construction meeting. We'll meet with the owner, meet with the engineer on site most of the time, and just basically run through the project, what to expect from Maguire, and we lay out kind of our schedule, how we're going to do the project, how we're going to accomplish each phase, when we're going to be there to do it, and then just give them some reassurance about our quality and our expectations. Make sure that their expectations are going to be met.
And I'm sure it helps that, we've been in the water tank business for over 100 years. So I'm sure that gives owners and engineers a little peace of mind that, this isn't the first time that we've taken on a project of this size and scope.
Yes, exactly. We've built thousands of tanks in our history and feel like we are the experts in the industry, in the new tank industry, and especially the tanks that we can provide them. Absolutely. The project management team that we have here, teams I should say, that we have here are very experienced in construction and I want to say experts in the field.
So after we've met with the owner, you've walked through all the expectations, you've talked about all the stuff, then we get down to the nuts and bolts of how does a project actually go from it's a drawing on paper and it's a concept to, okay, this is a water tower that delivers water to people. And that all starts with a foundation. Walk us through what that looks like, because a foundation for a water tower is something that you can't see, but it's one of the most important pieces of the project.
Yes, exactly. So back up just a little bit, there for you. We, after the bid phase, the bid design, we'll go into a design phase for this project. So we have, an engineer who designs our foundation, designs the tank, and runs through all that stuff. So from that foundation design, we'll go in, we'll have a subcontractor that'll go in there and build this foundation to the exact design. So what we have to do, we get all the testing, all the QC that goes into it, because like you said, this is that holds the tower up. There's a lot of weight in the air. There's a lot of water in the air. So this foundation holds this tank and tower in the air for 100 years. So we got to make sure that everything is met, all the specifications are met for this foundation, and all of our design factors are met with this foundation. So that the front side, we'll go in and we'll dig a foundation, much like you would a building. You're going down and you're pouring a footing, and then you pour the ring wall, and the tank actually gets held down by anchor bolts. So those have to be placed in the correct spot, and then the backfill, and it's engineered backfill compaction, and we're ready to go. We're ready for a tank.
And the nice thing about that too is there's a lot of work that goes into it, because the soil makes all the difference in the size, the thickness. So that's why those geotechnical surveys and the soil sample surveys are so important, I'm guessing.
Exactly. The soils they differ all over the country. When you work in as many different states as we do, our foundations are always different. And then another factor that goes into that is the height of the tank. You get wind loads. If you get downward along the coast where the winds are blowing a lot higher speeds and a lot more, that's another factor that goes into the foundation as well. So there's a standard spread footing ring wall foundation, or there's a piling system that we use as well. So we use auger cast piles, drilled piers, things like that that'll go down into the ground, sometimes 150 feet. So it just depends on the soils, depends on the height, and depends on the size of the tank.
And so while this foundation piece is going on, steel is being ordered so that fabrication of the actual tank can start. Talk about how that process goes from calling up the manufacturer of the steel and saying, this is what we need, to it actually showing up on site.
So correct. So back with the foundation is done, and then the design that came with the foundation, we designed the tank as well. We have our shop drawings, our designs, and we order our steel from there, and they basically come into our shop. They're flat pieces, so we have to run through. We have to cut the steel to size for each size of tank. Each tank has its different geometry. So from there, when the steel being brought into our fabrication facility, we take the sheet, we cut it, we form it, we're rolling it, we're pressing it, and then we're putting it together out here in our shop. The biggest pieces that can go down the road, and they're all sub-assembled here in the shop. So from there, the pieces will be sent to the job site for our erection crews to show up.
And another nice thing about Maguire Iron is that we have our own field erection crews. We don't subcontract field erection. Talk about the field erection process. So a sub-assembly pieces leave our shop, show up on site, and get delivered. What does the field erection crews do with them from there?
So from there, there's most of the work that we do in the field is done on the ground. I know the tank is in the air, and that's the piece when we're done, and that's the landmark that we leave behind us. But most of the work that we do in the field is assembled on the ground. Depending on the size of the tank, we can actually put the entire tank together on the ground. The base cone will be put together on the ground, and the column as well. So basically, when they're put together, the fabrication piece of it is done. It's the assembly that gets taken care of in the field, and they're sub-assembled. They're put together. Then a crane will come out, and we'll actually pick. Usually, a tank will be picked in 1 day. Sometimes it'll be 2 days. So it'll go from a lot of work being done on the ground to in 1 day the tank will be in the air.
That's one of the funniest things about our industry is one day the skyline of a city looks one way, and the next day it looks completely different because it doesn't take long to hang one of these tanks.
No, it doesn't. It truly is one full day of hanging it up there. There's a lot of going on. There's a lot of stress on the guys in the field. Hang day is a huge day, and that's why we have lots of spectators on the job sites or off the job site, but taking pictures and watching what happens on hang day, because it truly is one of the most exciting days in the field for us.
So tank gets hung, it's all welded, it's standing there, it's got zinc on it, and what happens to it from then? How does it turn into a piece of steel in the air to a landmark that's painted and is a billboard for the community?
Exactly. So back to the shop, we blast and prime our steel here in the shop. And so when it gets out to the field, we'll have a painting crew that'll come in there after it's erected, and we'll have to blast the seams and put another prime coat on it. And then from there, we just go into the interior and coat the interior, usually an epoxy interior for the wet area, and then the exterior is a polyurethane or a fluoropolymer type product that goes on the exterior. So we blast the seams when we're out there, and then just do the intermediate and finish coats. And from there, again, like you said, it's pretty awesome. We can put some really neat logos, and we can paint really a billboard for the community on this tank, and it'll be there for 100 years.
And it's funny because each community is completely different. Some it's just a block lettering, some don't put anything on it at all, and then there are others that get really elaborate logos, and so it kind of runs the spectrum of what a community wants.
Exactly. And we here, I always encourage on the bid phase to consider a large logo, consider the school mascot, consider, maybe if there's an industrial park or something in the area, consider something to put on there so people know when they come into your community that they're seeing that they're coming into this school. This is our mascot. This is our city, and to do something like that. But yeah, it's really it's up to the owners what they want. We can usually do most anything that they ask for.
So once the tank is painted, we're getting close to the point where we're going to put it in service and turn it over to the owner. What other pieces have to happen after painting to get it to where it's ready to be used by the community?
There's electrical work that'll go into it. Water storage tanks, they get run off of a need. So the water will go into the community as the community needs it. So most of the time there's what they call a SCADA, or a telemetry system, that kind of will tell the tank, tell the tower, and then also tell the city kind of how much is being used, when we need it by. And so that'll kind of open and close the valves and things for them. So the electrical work is it's fairly important piece. On the inside of the tank, there's really just some lights and some receptacles, but the power for the SCADA has to be up and running. There's antennas that go on it, and then that'll talk back to the operator to let you know if there's an issue with the water, with the temperature of the water, and things like that.
And those are some new, I say new, but in the last 20 years, those things have come a long way. Whereas, back in the day, a water storage tank held water and there was a pressure gauge that told you how much pressure was there, so you knew how much water was in it. And now there's elaborate SCADA systems. More and more communities are putting antennas on it. What kind of things do you guys have to do to make sure that all of that meets the city's needs? Because there's a lot going on in a water tower these days as opposed to 20, 30, 50 years ago.
Exactly. In addition to that, there's a lot of telecommunication companies out there, different cellular companies out there that want to use these towers for their antennas. So for what we can do, we can fabricate a whole array of parts and pieces that can go on this tank that will hold the coaxial cables, that will hold the antennas, that will provide height for these antennas to work. And so we can provide all that with our tower and with our design.
And to make sure it's done safely, because you see a lot of old water towers where they've tried to retrofit them to hold antennas, and it's not the safest thing in the world. And so doing it on the front end is much better.
It's much better, and it's designed. It's actually designed to hold those antennas, not just an afterthought.
So we've got the electrical done, the painting's done. What are some of the final things before you can close out a project and hand the keys over, as it were, to a community?
Well, everything is up and operational from there. So we'll disinfect the tank, we'll fill it with water, and then really, I don't want to make it sound too simple, but you open the gate valve and you let the water the water from the tank go into the system, into the service, and use it. You use the water, you get your bacteria to make sure that there's no bacteria. The tests are back, the tank is clean, the water is usable and drinkable, and you just open it up, you feed it to your system, and you let it work. From there, a lot of times, like we talked about, we're replacing a tank. So there's tank demolition that comes into it. So a community will have 2 water towers in service at the same time sometimes, and then they'll slowly take their existing tank out of service and run this new one for a while to make sure that everything is running well, make sure that their valves work, make sure that there's no leaks or anything like that, and then we'll demo the existing tank from there, and then they'll be all on one system from there.
Now, once a community has a brand new piece of infrastructure like a water tower, what do you recommend for them for maintenance, for long-term care, for that kind of stuff? Because as you know, we're in the business of building and maintaining tanks. What does it take to maintain this brand new piece of infrastructure going into the future to last another 100 years like their old one did?
So with a new tank construction, there's a warranty period on it. It's a 1-year warranty period. We'll go in there before the 1-year warranty period is up, and we'll inspect this tank for any items or any issues that may need taken care of. We'll take care of them. Then what I recommend after that is just have a yearly look at it. Have our crews come in there once a year. If not once a year, it would be every other year to clean this tank out, to inspect it, to check the coatings, to make sure that everything is okay. There's no holidays or anything like that. And then just put it on a plan every other year, have it cleaned out, inspected, and taken care of. It's like putting insurance on your, on a new building or a vehicle. You want to ensure that this tank is going to last, for 100 years, and that's the way to make it last for 100 years, is to have somebody keep their eyes on it, to be in there to take care of it, to look at it, and to preserve your landmark and your investment.
And that's the other thing that I don't think a lot of people realize is a water tower, for a lot of communities, is the largest piece of infrastructure investment that they make.
Yes, by far, and it's got to be taken care of. I mean, if it's not going to be taken care of, then we're going to be in there in 10 years to repaint it. So you're painting, the coating of that steel is extremely important, and that needs to be watched.
Not to mention that's where clean water goes to when you open your faucet in your house. That's where your clean water is coming from.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Troy. Well, thanks for joining us on the Maguire Iron Podcast and helping us understand how a tank goes from just a concept to delivering water to a community.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me.
Remember, you can always connect with us by going to our website, maguireiron.com. You can ask questions by sending us an email at info@maguireiron.com, or you can follow or reach out to us on any of our social media platforms. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Thank you for joining us on the Maguire Iron Podcast.